Hey everyone, and welcome to the Healthpath podcast. Today's guest is the brilliant Carrie Bennett, and I speak to her about all things earthing. So I ask Carrie what earthing is and what the mechanisms are by which earthing works. We discuss how long we need to be earthed or grounded to experience the benefits that have been evidenced in the research. I ask her if there are specific conditions that may benefit from earthing. And we also discuss what is conductive, i.e., if I'm standing on my patio or on the pavement, am I going to be able to experience the benefits from earthing? We explore all of this in today's episodes. For links to the research papers that we mention, links to products that I recommend, including some earthing sandals and earthing mats, then just check out the links below. But for now, here is my conversation with Carrie. I hope you enjoy. Carrie, welcome back to the Health Path podcast. It's really nice to connect again.
Thank you, Alex. I'm so excited. I love chatting with you.
So this is the third time you've been on the podcast. So I think for that reason, and also the fact that it feels like you've kind of exploded in people's awareness of your work. That's from my perspective, at least. So I think there's no need for any major introduction. People are going to be pretty familiar, I think, with you, your perspective on health. And I asked you to come back so we can do a bit of a deep dive into grounding or earthing today.
Oh, I love this topic. I don't know if I've ever done a podcast just on this, but it's a
Uh,
fabulous topic.
yeah, and I think it's such a powerful tool that is so accessible,
Mhm.
free, and it just needs to be more known. So I'm just going to throw the ball right into your courts and pretty much let you do your thing for the next 40 minutes.
All about earthing, right? All about earthing and grounding. So, first and foremost, I think people need to know that those two terms can be used interchangeably. They essentially mean the same thing. And what it means is touching bare skin to earth, right? The earth. And when we do that, we conduct electrons from the surface of the earth into our bodies. And that has amazing health benefits that we can dive right into. But I want people to understand that the surface of the earth, it literally is just this infinite source of electricity or electrons. And electrons will flow from where there's a greater source, the earth, to where there's a lesser source, a body, especially a body that lives indoors these days, because we're not continually connected to the surface of the earth like we used to be. Oh, probably just 400 to 500 years ago. It probably hasn't been that long that we were always connected. But now that we're not, we're going to be electron deficient. And so it's been discovered within the past 30 years that reconnecting our bodies to the surface of the earth flows these electrons into our bodies. And again, like I said, it has massive health benefits.
Yeah, and I think there's a 2020 paper that came out doing a little bit of a review, and on one of the pages there's this lovely visual of the human body, and basically from head to toe, there are benefits associated with grounding that have been shown in these studies. So, where do you think the best place to start is in regards to, I guess, the mechanisms we understand, this idea that electrons are flowing into the body, and then how that influences actually our health. So are there specific conditions that this can be helpful for, or is it actually more, I guess, even generalized than that?
I would say there's definitely specific conditions, but it's just good for general health balance or health maintenance, right? It's a beautiful habit to get into. And so the flow of the electrons, we're semiconductors, right? We conduct electricity. So the flow happens via our skin and it goes into our connective tissue, mostly our fascia. And our fascia is everywhere, from the biggest scales that we might be able to touch, like the side of our thigh, that IT band, all the way into the deepest, tiniest nooks and crannies of each cell, including right into the nucleus of every single cell, just in finer and finer mesh. And so if you think about it that way, our fascia is this interconnected highway. And if this interconnected highway can pull in electrons and funnel them anywhere, that's why earthing has such a broad effect on what it can do for our health, because it can go anywhere that it's needed. And one of the main things that earthing does, these free electrons do, is they're essentially nature's antioxidant. And what I mean by that is we hear all the time about maybe reactive oxygen species as being bad or damaging, and or the need for antioxidants because they help to calm inflammation. And all inflammation is it's a molecule that's looking for another electron. These molecules don't like to have what's called an unpaired electron. Electrons like friends. They like to be together. And when they're together, they're happy. They won't cause damage. They won't, for example, damage the cell membrane and cause lipid peroxidation, damage of the cell membrane. They won't damage the mitochondria and cause mitochondrial dysfunction. And so, we want to make sure that we help to calm these unpaired electrons. And if Earth is a free source of electrons, essentially we're funneling the electrons into our body, and they're looking for these molecules that want a friend, and they'll pair right up, and that will calm them. They will no longer become a damaging inflammatory species inside of our body. And so it's really cool that, and it's very much true that one of the main things we do see with earthing is lowering levels of inflammation. And anyone can do a Google search to see kind of like these before and after effects, where you see a thermographic scan or a heat scan of someone's body. Let's say someone with rheumatoid arthritis that'll have like a really hot spot in the knee. And, before earthing, it's full of just like this red and intense pink color, this heat, this inflammation. And then after earthing, which generally will have the effects happen after about 20 to 40 minutes, all of a sudden it goes down massively. So we can see in real time the effects that the absorption of these electrons have in terms of calming inflammation in the body.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the fascia is almost the conductor of this. That's what's allowing these electrons to go where they need to go ultimately.
It's the highway. And remember that highway is surrounded by that exclusion zone water that I love to chat about and have done so in the past. And so that's also what conducts them, both the fascia and that beautiful hydration around them.
Perfect. And I guess you've answered in some ways the next natural question, which is, okay, the method is simple. We need to get skin on Earth. And then we're looking at sort of maybe a minimum of 20 minutes in regards to getting a significant positive impact.
No, that's the crazy part, right? That's the crazy part. That's if you truly have chronic inflammation.
Okay.
That we do need a continuous supply, because there is still mitochondrial dysfunction or something happening in a tissue. So there is almost like a continuous production of these reactive oxygen species. So they do need a continuous input. But the effects of earthing happen instantaneously. And this is my favorite thing. When we touch the earth, instantaneously we get that electron flow. So that, and remember, electrons are a currency, an energy currency in the body. We funnel those electrons to the mitochondria to make water and ATP, right? Very, very important things. And so we get those electrons instantaneously. Almost instantaneously, within about 2 seconds, we get a balancing of the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system all of a sudden goes, oh, Carrie's not being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. It really gets a snapshot that I'm not in a state of threat. And so if I wake up in some sort of a cortisol dominant state or in this state of fight or flight, I can balance that out within 2 seconds of earthing. It's the coolest research out there. And then within minutes, you see healthier blood flow. So again, something you can search for, right, on a before and after is blood cells that are stacked up on each other. It's called this rouleau formation, like a stack of pancakes. Red blood cells aren't meant to be clumped together like stacks of pancakes. They're meant to be their own individual little rafts floating, because when they're their individual rafts and they have space around them, they can pull oxygen in better. They can pull nutrients and carry nutrients and transport them to the tissues better. And so within about 5 minutes of earthing, you'll see that all of a sudden these red blood cells that were in this rouleau formation start to separate, and they become their own little individual cells again, which makes them better carriers, like I said, of oxygen and nutrients. Okay. That's within 5 minutes, right?
Is that the zeta potential?
That is the zeta potential. Okay. Yeah. We have in the scientific literature, we've got different names for negative charge or electron status. And it just so happens that the electron status of a red blood cell is termed zeta potential. But you could just call it a halo of electrons around it, because that's what it is.
Amazing. Mm-hmm. And then after that, what's the next step within this that you've seen?
Oh, after that point, once you reach about the 10-minute mark, that's when you're starting to really tackle the inflammatory processes that are happening. And so that's when you're going to start to see reductions in chronic inflammation on a like a thermographic scan. But like I said, you'll see even more progress from 10 minutes to 20 minutes to 30 minutes to 40 minutes and beyond. You'll see more and more a reduction of the chronic inflammation. And then what you see when you do this regularly, and especially oftentimes if one sleeps this way, sleeps grounded at night, you see a balancing of the cortisol and melatonin rhythms. So in spite of one's light that's entering their eyes, which is fascinating, right? Because I'm all about light and circadian rhythm and how that really sets the circadian rhythm. Even when one doesn't pay attention to that at all and simply sleeps grounded, you'll see a balancing effect of the cortisol and melatonin rhythm, which syncs one back up to the natural cycle.
Wow. And do we know why it has that much power over, I guess, light when it comes to this?
Well, it's I would say it's synonymous with light, but there are diurnal fluctuations in the intensity of the electron flow. And so it doesn't stay static. It changes based on if there's sunlight out there versus darkness. So our perception of the electron flow or the actual electron status of a given area has a 24-hour rhythm that we can tune into as well.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's very cool. Okay. And I think there's also a study from memory talking about, and I don't know if this ties in with what you just mentioned actually, but sort of blood viscosity as well. So we've got kind of everything from cardiovascular. I know there's some sort of research that talks around just gastric health and bloating and things, and how grounding can be helpful from that perspective too.
Yeah, if we are a body that runs on electricity, and if being inside divorces us from that electricity, it makes sense that dysfunctions will start to happen. And I'm sure, as you know, Alex, it's not like it's not this first your gut health goes, then it's your immune system. It's everyone is kind of uniquely susceptible to different dysfunctions happening in their body. And so kind of where you're susceptible is where your body will short out and that'll start to produce symptoms. But that makes sense that if I can reestablish that electrical flow into the body and energize the body with electricity, then of course I'm going to be able to start to see improvements in things like digestive health, cognition, pain reduction. So it's really this simple application that has such a broad reaching effect. And just going back to what you were alluding to with blood viscosity, something I see massively important for people is that you'll see a change in blood pressure, right? You'll see a change in hypertension. So you'll get when you're out, especially if you're earthing outside, because you're also going to get some sunlight signaling that will allow your blood vessels to kind of widen. And now all of a sudden you've got these beautiful wider blood vessels. You've got these red blood cells that are flowing freely. The heart doesn't have to contract as hard or as heavily. So hypertension is something that we'll see a reduction in quite significantly. Also, simply, I find people who earth on a regular basis, or even do their workouts earth, and I'm certain this has to do with the ability to deliver nutrients to working muscles, they're going to show a faster recovery post-workout, because as they're kind of breaking down and creating this micro damage that we want to have happen with movement, with exercise, right? With exercise, we're supplying our body with a source of energy to essentially heal it faster. So you see a ton of professional athletes that are kind of getting into the idea of wanting to earth, whether it's before their actual competition, and they'll touch bare earth to kind of charge up their connective tissue with these electrons before their competition, or you'll see it afterwards. You'll see them understanding the need to want to sleep with earthing patches or a grounded sheet of some sort, because they understand that they're going to recover that much faster.
I mean, that reminds me a lot of sort of photobiomodulation in regards to some of the same benefits that you get as well. And as you say, I guess that sort of double whammy of electrons being absorbed up from Mother Earth with sunlight if you're doing this outside. And is it the nitric oxide that there's a mechanism between just sunlight, nitric oxide, vasodilation, better circulation, and then grounding, better circulation, and you can start to very easily see how all of these different health benefits can be possible.
Right. You can see how, like, if we just live kind of how we were designed, how the human body was designed to live, everything kind of falls back into place. The red blood cells themselves have a sensor, right? It's an enzyme called eNOS, which is it's not only eNOS can make nitric oxide, like you said, which will help to dilate the blood vessels, but it also senses how well the blood is flowing. And so as it's sensing how well the blood is flowing, it will decide, do we need to dilate here? Do we need to, contract it just to move blood appropriately? And so that's the name of the game, because then tying it, this is okay. This is a little bit, potentially next level out there for people, but our blood flow is a current of electricity. If these red blood cells are surrounded with electrons, moving electrons produce a magnetic field. It's called our biofield, right? It's called our body's biofield. So we've got then this biofield outside of us that can be felt up to 6 feet away, kind of what they're saying with people perceiving, but they've got devices that can perceive this biofield 22 feet outside of the human body. So our blood flow is like, if it's healthy, it's this healthy extension of our bodies into the space around us. And so, it's just a fascinating thing to recognize, that the ability of our blood to flow freely, and in conjunction with what the body needs, it's a key signal, not only inside of the body, but as an extension outside of the body as well.
Fascinating. Okay. So with all of that in mind, is there an obvious next area that you would like to touch on, Carrie?
Yeah, these are all the questions. So this is the frequently asked questions that everyone is going to ask, right? And so I want to make sure we cover those, because you'll get the, what type of surface can I ground on, or can I earth on? Right. And so I think it's very, very important to recognize that any living surface on the earth, or any natural earth surface, you will be able to pull the electrons from. So what that means is grass, dirt, gravel, even sand. Anytime you're in a body of water, all of those things will conduct. Natural stone will conduct. So, and as will plants whose roots are in the earth. So this plant next to me, no, because it's in a pot, but those plants outside in the backyard, absolutely. So you can touch a plant and have electrons flow into you. Things that will not be surfaces for earthing are like a deck, right? Dead wood. Even though it was once living material, it is now dead. So it's not conductive. Asphalt is not conductive. Anything where there is an underlying of like a plastic sheet, even if it's on top of natural earth, unfortunately, that will block the conductivity. However, concrete can be a conductor, because concrete is made of lots of little bits of natural stone. So I will test these surfaces with my continuity meter, and most concrete I have found to be conductive, especially when wet. So I hope that helps people understand that there's a lot of surfaces that we can use, and there's a couple that you have to be aware of will not be conductive.
Yeah, and it's good news that concrete is. Makes things a bit easier.
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely. In the middle of winter, sometimes I'll just dump, I'll boil a tub of water and just dump it out the back patio, because it's concrete, and that's where I'll just do some earthing. So melts a little bit of the snow, so it makes it a little bit easier to stand out there longer. And there are ways to earth indoors, but one has to be a little bit careful. And there are certain work situations where I do recommend people. I delineate, I call indoor earthing, I call grounding, right? Because you're really pulling electrons through a grounded outlet. And I have a mat in right now, because this is a situation where I do feel like it would be important to be grounded. I'm going to be on the computer today off and on for about 6 hours. And have a couple of times to go outside to get that natural light sync up to touch the earth. But I do want to make sure that I can maybe get a continuous source of electrons into my body. And so having a little grounding mat is a way to do that. I highly encourage it. Now, I'm hardwired here, but I highly encourage it for people who are in an office environment where there's a lot of Wi-Fi. Because as electrons flow up into you, again, that magnetic field If it's strong enough, it can actually act as a mini Faraday cage, a way to essentially help prevent the damaging effects of non-native EMFs, the Wi-Fi radiation that we can get. So I would encourage someone to maybe explore that. You just have to make sure that the outlet you plug your mat into really truly is grounded, meaning it is truly connected to the Earth's electrons. And you have to be aware that certain companies, I think, are better than others in terms of their design and their research in terms of their grounding products.
Okay. And you mentioned a device that you have, a continue or something.
A continuity meter. Yeah, a continuity meter. So oh, go ahead.
On after you.
Oh, no, it's cool, right? So this meter is from a woman who's really amazing with her grounding and her products, Dr. Laura Conover. She has a company called Intuition Physician, and I got her meter. And it's a plug, and you can plug it into an outlet and then touch a surface, or like if I plugged it into the outlet and then put my feet on top of this mat and pushed the button, it would show, is Carrie continuing the electron flow with it turns green, or is Carrie not continuing the electron flow, and it would show red. And so this one would show green for certain. You can even do it outside. You can plug the plug into the earth and then stand on different surfaces. So I would then stand on the earth next to it on the grass, and it would show green. I would stand on the concrete. It would show green for me. I would stand on the concrete step, that one step, right? It would not show green. I would not be conducting there, right? So you can kind of go around to different surfaces to ask yourself, am I conducting electrons? And one of the coolest things that I found was that and this was a discovery I made because I brought this continuity meter to a hotel. I don't know why, but I did. And and the ring around the bathtub drain was conductive. Because bathtubs have to be grounded, right? You don't want to get an a lightning strike and then have an issue with those. So those have to be grounded.
Wow.
And so it was really cool to be like, just sitting in this empty bathtub with my feet touching this drain. I'm conducting electrons. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of a fun little thing, Mike. And it's fun. If anyone has kids, it's how you get kids interested in this stuff. You know, that you get that, and then you also get one of these non-native EMF meters that beeps so they can go around looking for sources of non-native EMFs. It's fun.
Well, I'm currently experiencing the opposite at the moment. So Oscar, my 22-month-old, for some reason has decided he absolutely does not like me wearing my blue light blocking glasses.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's a disaster. So in the evenings and mornings, it's just a no-go at the moment. So I think, yeah, grounding is going to be a little bit more important for me right now.
Yeah, kind of shift his attention elsewhere. Oh, what a bummer. What a bummer. That's hard. That's hard. Yeah, but a stubborn 2-year-old is not necessarily a battle you want to pick right now.
Definitely not. Are there any other common questions that we can answer for our listeners, Carrie?
I mean, we've gone over a ton of stuff in a short amount of time, Alex. I can't think of anything unless you want to just talk more about different health benefits from it. But otherwise, no. I mean, this was a pretty succinct way to, I guess, introduce people to the concept of earthing and grounding.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the beauty of it, as we said at the beginning, is it's pretty straightforward ultimately. It just needs to be more well known ultimately.
And I can point people to the Earthing Institute and the Earthing. So the Earthing Institute is where all the research is being done. And there is the Earthing book, which I don't have it within an arm's reach right now, written by Dr. James Oshman and Clint Ober, who was an electrical engineer, right? He was an electrician, basically trying to figure out how, trying to understand electron flow in that sense, and then recognizing that there's actually a health benefit to it. So the combination of those two minds, one's a biophysicist, one has nothing to do with research or even a health background. They've put together massive amounts of research in that book. There's a documentary they put together, which is a really great way to kind of introduce yourself to this as well. I think it's on Netflix. So I encourage everyone to explore that, because like you said, this is simple. We just have to get the motivation to do it. And so that's why I love the fact that the effect is instantaneous. If we were to say you have to do it for 40 minutes every day, that's such a barrier. But if we said, okay, for example, when I park the car, when I know I still have to go get the kids or run an errand, I park the car, it's not in the garage, it's in the driveway. And right next to it is a bush. And I'm the weirdo now in the neighborhood in another way. Like I'll stand there and I'll just hold on to the bush. But I know that it's a little electron recharge, right? So if we can kind of recognize doing it, even little bits like that throughout the day, we're continually giving our electrical body a recharge with it. So I encourage people just to know that just little bits can matter.
Yeah. And I guess, thinking around how to make this easier, there are shoes that now you can get that are grounded and things like this. So it's becoming more and more easy to stay grounded for longer, I guess, ultimately.
Yes, and there are definitely shoes that either have little conductive, what are called like little conductive dots that are metal on the bottom, rivets, or some have conductive carbon. And I've tested out a lot of a handful, I should say, because there's not a ton of brands. I've tested out a handful of brands, and yeah, it's my go-to in the summer. I have an earthing sandal that I use that I love in situations where I just can't be barefoot, which I always try to be if at all possible. And then in the winter, there's hiking boots, right? There's warmer shoes that one can wear when doing it. So I will wear it oftentimes when I'm on playground supervision. So I volunteer once a week at the kids' school to be outside for 2 hours, just to watch the kids on the playground. And it's like, why not be connected to the earth the whole time?
Yeah, absolutely. Carrie, thank you so much for coming back on and diving into this. It's really appreciated. And hopefully we'll do episode 4 or round 4 at some point in the future, because I love hearing you share all of this information.
Oh, Alex, I love talking about any of this stuff. So I would love to come back anytime. Let's pick a topic and go for it.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Carrie.
Thank you.